Hey guys, it's what? Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's mykenyanpuff, and today we are going to be talking about the hair growth cycle. This is the science of how your hair grows out of your scalp, and it's a really good foundation in just understanding how hair works. So it is a sciencey video. If you're not into it, you can just click out, but if you're interested in understanding how it works, I'll try my best to keep it brief but helpful, and I will definitely leave links if you want to read up more. I'll also leave a link to Green Beauty's YouTube channel. She is a hair YouTuber who just gets into the science of natural hair, and she does it so well, so detailed, with some great graphics, and I highly recommend that you go to her channel to learn a lot about natural hair, and hopefully yeah, it could help you on your personal journey. Now, when it comes to the hair growth cycle, we have four phases. I will be referring to my phone. We have the Anagen phase, we have the Catagen phase, we have the Telogen phase, and the Exigen phase. So four phases. I'll just explain a little bit about each of the four phases. Now, if you remember your science, the layers of the skin, hopefully I'll get a picture to insert. We had the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous tissue, or the hypodermis. Then with the hair follicle, it basically seeps into the dermal layer of the skin, and it receives nourishment from there. So with that little understanding, we can start with the first phase. So the anagen phase is the first phase. It's also known as the active phase or the growth phase, and this is the longest phase of all the four. It usually lasts anywhere from 2 to 7 years from most of the sources that I found. Some even said up to 10 years, but I believe generally it's between 2 to 7 years. So it's a very long phase, and basically how this anagen phase works is the cells in the dermal papilla are actively dividing in order to give rise to new hair fibers, and then what happens is the hair follicle buries itself into the dermal papilla so that it can receive nourishment through blood supply. So in the anagen phase, at any given time, 80 to 85% of all the hair on your head is in the anagen phase. So basically, most of your hair is in the growing phase, which is great. And this is definitely the most talked about phase because a lot of studies are going into how to lengthen the anagen phase, because people with a longer anagen phase grow longer hair and vice versa. So that's basically it when it comes to the anagen phase. Number two, the catagen phase. It's also known as the changing phase or the transitional phase. So about 2% of all the hair of your on your head at any given time is in this phase, and it lasts roughly 1 to 2 weeks. Now, what happens here is no new cells are being produced in the dermal papilla, and then what happens is the hair follicle shrinks up to a sixth of its length. So because of the shrinking of the hair follicle, it detaches itself from its nourishing blood supply, and that's really important to remember. So the hair follicle has shrunk up and detached from its blood supply. Number three, we have the telogen phase or the resting phase. So as the name suggests, it's just a resting phase. The follicle is dormant. This phase, about 10 to 15% of all your hair strands at any given time are in this phase. So it lasts roughly 10 to 12 weeks. And basically what happens in this phase is, since the follicle is dormant, the cells around the follicle still continue to divide and might just support the follicle a bit. So in this phase, your follicle is kind of suspended, and then maybe new hair starts to grow underneath this follicle that's about to be shed off. Next phase is the exogen phase, or the shedding phase. This is another phase that's also been talked about most. So anagen and exogen phases tend to be the more popular ones. Now the shedding phase, it's only 1% of all your hair at any given time that's in this phase. So generally that's why shedding is not as much, like you're not shedding all the hair on your head. And using those percentages, that's when they came up with the average of 100 to 150 strands of your hair are shed daily. So it's only 1% of your hair that's in this phase at any given time, and basically just the hair sheds from the follicle. There's not much to it. So those are the 4 phases. I know I've gone over them pretty fast, but remember there will be links if you want to read up more on it. But so we have the anagen phase, we have the catagen, the telogen, and the exogen phases. Now that we understand that a bit, I just want to give you guys a few notes that you need to understand. Now, number 1, each hair strand goes through its own hair cycle, like it has its own schedule. So that means that there could be 2 hair strands together, but one is in anagen phase, the other one is in the telogen phase. So that's also probably a reason why our hair doesn't grow out evenly, like perfectly evenly, because your hair at different points, each hair strand is doing its own thing. The next point is that genetics and hormones play a huge role in your hair growth cycle. Now, genetics may somewhat limit the length of your anagen cycle. So like they say that Asians maybe have the longest anagen cycle, hence why they grow their hair really long. Africans tend to have a shorter hair cycle, although the difference isn't like that huge. The length of your anagen phase is predetermined genetically, so you can't do that much to alter the length of your phases, but you can make the most out of them. As for hormones, hormones affect everything. Hair growth, it's physiological, and so a good example when it comes to hormones is during pregnancy. So like women, when they're pregnant, the high levels of the estrogen and progesterone levels, basically what they do is they lock in more of your hair strands in the anagen phase. So remember I mentioned that only 80 to 85% of your hair strands are in the anagen phase at any given time. But then now when you're pregnant, it can be anywhere up to 95% of your hair strands in the anagen phase. So obviously you're going to get thicker hair, your hair is going to grow long, just because of the effect of these hormones. But then what happens is, once the ladies give birth, they experience postpartum shedding, where they shed excessive amounts of hair, and that's basically because your hormone levels are going to drop and go back to normal, which means your cycle is also going to go back to normal. So most of those hair strands that were locked in the anagen phase will just swiftly move into the other phases of your hair and will shed off. So that's, I think, a good example of how hormones play a role in the hair growth cycle. Other things that affect the hair growth cycle include seasons. So the weather does have an impact on the hair growth cycle. We also have any psychological or traumatic stress or experience does have an effect on the hair growth cycle. So what we are talking about, anything from just stress to sickness to dramatic rapid weight loss to extreme dieting. So if you want to promote the active or the growing phase of your hair growth cycle, then the things that you need to do are kind of obvious, and they do include exercising and just keeping active, because exercising promotes blood circulation, which means that nutrients are being supplied not only to your hair but also to your skin and to your nails, and it's just it's just a good thing to do to promote overall well-being. Definitely, diet is very important. You have to eat your fruits, eat your vegetables, eat your proteins, because your hair strand is made up of protein, and all these just give the nutrients that your body requires for you to have, again, healthy skin, healthy hair, healthy nails, healthy everything. There's some supplements and some herbs that are believed or are proven to lengthen the anagen phase, and I feel like I won't get into that in this video because I think they deserve a video on their own. There's a lot of science into it, but definitely I'm sure you've heard of supplements that do promote hair growth. So there are supplements, but the things that you can control are just eating right, exercising, and try and keep stress at bay. More often than not, emotional and psychological stress eventually translate into physiological stress. So once you're stressed, whatever happens in the mind or in the brain, it affects your whole system. So you want to make sure that you're not doing things that just send your body into shock or into panic mode, because once that happens, girl, your hair is going to just be falling off. So keep stress at bay, eat right, exercise, and I think with those natural ways of promoting a healthy body and a healthy hair growth cycle, then you should be good, and then look at supplements and other things as the secondary resort or the last resort. I really do hope that you found this video helpful. Um, if you do have any questions, if my science is a bit off, for those who geek out like me, feel free to correct me. If you have more information to add, whatever, anything, just feel free to share it in the comments. You can always DM me on Instagram or email me, mykenyanpuff@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all my new subscribers for sticking with me and for finding my channel useful. Always remember that your hair is your crown. Embrace it, love it, and take care of it. God bless you all. Goodbye.